how you been? How are you dealing with COVID? This is our second podcast recording in lockdown. What's been going on with you?
It's been up and down. So Easter was a few weeks ago. I'm not really sure how long ago it was. I'm not great at the passage of time at the best of times. You could genuinely ask me when an event was, and I wouldn't know if it was 3 weeks or 6 months ago. Sometimes. But anyway, so yeah, Easter was a couple of weeks ago. I took it the week after Easter off from my teaching, and getting out of the routine kind of threw me off quite badly, and has affected my sleep and stuff. I'm kind of back on track now. I was teaching the last week or 2 weeks, I'm not sure. Yeah, the isolation is kind of starting to get to me a bit.
But I'm here for you, Bill.
Thank you, Edgar. And likewise, I've started taking longer walks with the dog. So that's nice. There's a river near where I live, so it's like kind of 5 minutes away down a hill, and I go down to the river and let the dog off the leash, and she runs around, and that's nice. And I see ducks and swans and things.
Oh, that's so cute, Bill.
Because you know of my fondness for waterfowl.
No, you have a fondness for waterfowl.
You know the way I like geese.
Oh, geese, right? Sorry, I didn't. In my head, I didn't think that geese were waterfowl. You do like geese. I don't know if the listeners know just how much you like geese. Geese.
Very possibly not. No, I find geese really entertaining. They're both, like, I think they're quite beautiful animals. Like, they look really nice. But I also admire their kind of take no shit attitude.
I find that they look both regal and silly at the same time.
Yeah, there's an interesting dramatic tension there, isn't there?
There is. When Bill was away on his postgrad studies internet, he went to York. You've said that before. We can say that you've been. Yeah, you were in York, and there was a heap of geese in York, and it was very fun, like watching your social media timeline and just it being blasted with geese on a near continuous permanent basis while Bill was away. It was very, very entertaining.
I got really into photographing them while I lived there.
Oh my god, I was looking for stuff to. I haven't done merch in ages because, like I said, I ran out of kind of memes. Geese, Bill. Geese. Yeah, isolation. I've stopped running. I've stopped going outside because like I don't really need to, and I was just like, let's be diligent about this, Edgar. I'm quite fit and stuff, so it's not like I really badly need the exercise. So I've decided to just really cocoon, and it's beginning to get a little bit. It's not great for the mental health, like, because running really helps clear the mind. No. And now days are blending into one another. They all look the same. It's a very strange time, Bill, and I cannot wait for restrictions to be lifted whenever they may happen, and I can go out for a big, long, giganto run all across the city to all the parks. Oh, I can't wait. Are
you doing anything instead of running?
No.
Like, are you doing it? Like, are you doing any like weights or anything?
No, I don't do weights anyways because weights slow you down. No, I'm doing like no exercise, like just nothing, nothing at all. I'm watching the eating. I'm not going mad with the eating or anything. But yeah, no, it's just I've just defaulted to becoming completely sedentary, which is a thing. It's definitely a thing. Hopefully, these restrictions get lifted at some stage. Hopefully,
but hopefully not too soon, as well. Like hopefully it'll be, at a time where it is actually safe to do so, not just doing so in order to make some imaginary numbers get bigger.
Sure, yeah. I hope, at a time when it's safe, but I hope it's not. I hope that time is not in the very distant future, because that would suck so much. I need to backtrack a thing I said last episode. Remember I talked about how my perception of the swine flu was so much worse than this? I take that back now. This is going on so long, and it's had such a detrimental effect on health and economics and everything. That like this is an entirely new and different beast, and the comparison to swine flu was not apt in retrospect. So I just want to strike that one from the record there, Bill, if that's okay.
To formally recant your statement.
Formally recant. Another thing I want to share, obviously with lockdown happening, media consumption is through the roof around the place, and I want to shout out a podcast that people may be interested in listening to during lockdown. And that podcast is, oh crap, I forget the name. It's by Theo Vaughn. I call it the Theo Vaughn podcast, but what the hell is it called? I need to Google. Crap. Bear with me.
The Artifexian podcast, bringing you professionalism since 2015.
Oh yeah. 2015, man, 5 years. Good God. Anyway, the podcast is called...
That was a guess, and I think it would be really funny if I actually guessed wrong, and I think that would really reinforce the joke. But anyway, go on.
So the podcast is called This Past Weekend by a comedian called Theo Vaughn. And like, I listen to quite a number of comedian podcasts, and a lot of them tend to be kind of... A lot of comedy, I think, these days tends to be... at the expense of others. It's kind of like a mean comedy in a way seems to be a thing. And I find I don't really enjoy that. I don't enjoy laughing at the expense of others. This guy, Theo Vaughn, he's a comic from Louisiana. And his shtick is all about positivity, and like he's had like troubles in his life before, and he talks a lot about like overcoming them through positive thinking and being positive, and he encourages atmospheres of like positive interaction with his listeners and things, and all of that is kind of set to the backdrop of him telling these crazy imaginary stories of a kind of hyperbolic Cajun lifestyle, like satirizing a sort of fictional hyperbolic Cajun lifestyle, and it's so funny, and it's so uplifting, and it's so funny, and it's just so wholesome. And I think people, if they want something that's really funny but it's not funny at the expense of others and mean and that sort of thing, Theo is your man. He's great, and he's bliss. His mind is beautiful to watch. He will react to people so quickly and in an extremely funny, quirky manner that you kind of left thinking like, how is that brain working in there? What is going on in there? It's glorious. Everyone should go check it out. It's wonderful.
Okay. Cheers.
Anywho, so that was COVID catharsis corner. Should we do some follow?
Let's do some follow-up.
Okay, so the first thing I have to follow up is that we got suggestions for Book Club Corner or Artifexian Book Corner. Can I just encourage people again to go to the form? There will be a form in the show notes. Again, this episode, leave your suggestions in the form, because there were people leaving them on Reddit and also via email and in the form and etc. And if it's all over the place, it's hard to kind of maintain. So just if you have a suggestion, please do leave it in the form. That form is going to be in the show notes. Then the next thing I want to bring up is follow up on the last episode. We had this idea of a heavy volcanism, lots of volcanism going on in the setting. That seemed to spark people's interest a lot. There's a lot of responses to it. So just thought I'd bring up a couple of them for the original question asker from the previous show. We got an email from a chap called Will C, who recommends the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. And apparently this idea of like increased volcanism, a volcanic centric world, is a central part of that story, and Will C recommends it for like a good exploration of how culture will evolve in a very volcanically active world. So just want to flag that. Go check it out if that's a thing that interests you.
I've not read her, but she's won awards all around her as far as I remember.
I mean, Will C's email intrigued me enough that I thought about putting it on the list. So, Will, if you want to fill out the form there, just to put it all in one database, it seems like a really good book to review in a book club corner. So, possible future endeavors there. Then we got a bit of feedback from u/OliveUbean, which is a wonderful username. And they proposed the idea of how plants would deal in a volcanically very active setting. And they proposed the idea of like lava seeds, that seeds were like resistant to lava. So when the flows come periodically, the seeds would kind of fall off plants and be carried away by the flow to germinate somewhere else. And I thought that was really cool. And then there's lots of speculation in the sub about how then those like very hardy seeds could be used as a form of currency. And if seeds were to be made currency, that might lead to very interesting cultural ideas of economics, when the money is just a thing that you will eventually kind of use, a thing that can just go in the ground and stuff. So there was very interesting speculation happened there, and I encourage people to check out the sub for that.
Sure, that's cool. I like that last idea about the money particularly.
I think that was your idea, pal.
Did I bring it up first? I remember discussing it, but I don't remember being the first to bring it up.
Oh, okay, then maybe it wasn't.
I am pretty great and narcissistic, so it's very possible.
And then we got another comment on the Reddit to do with the migration patterns on volcanically active worlds. I've messed up the linking in the show notes here. Again, continuing the theme of professionalism for the Artifexian podcast, so I can't name drop you here, but you know who you are. This person brought up the idea that migration patterns would be hugely affected by increased volcanic activity, and that migration will likely be a much smaller endeavor, less expansive endeavor. Migratory groups will likely be much smaller. And then what I found really interesting was like interspecies migration would be more common. So to kind of like mitigate disruption. So like if you're a big flock of swallows, for example, and for some reason the path you take is completely disrupted, all those swallows then could break formation in a way and then piggyback on the magpie migration train, and there'd be a lot more kind of freedom in that, which I thought was a pretty cool idea. So apologies, poster, for not name dropping you. I'll stick you in the show notes just to credit you.
So all of you brought it up as well, but mainly the migration discussion was from Drozenkeep.
Drozenkeep. There we go. Thank you, Bill. You rescued that one for me.
Sure did.
Sure did.
I like that idea of the multiple species migrating in the same groups. That's kind of interesting, and that they would have like interspecies socialization.
And I don't know how applicable this is, but like my brain is going along the lines of what happens if intelligent species evolve from those species and evolve in a context of kind of cooperation like that. And like, would xenophobia on this world be lowered somewhat because you've evolved to like be okay with every sort of animal? And that could be an interesting thing to explore as well.
Or like if just one species evolves intelligence, and they had a sort of a caretaker role over the others, so that they were like, it was kind of like developing agriculture and animal husbandry, but a little bit more holistic.
Yep, for sure. I didn't think when this question came up last show, I didn't think it would go. There'd be this much to dig into it. It's amazing how like someone just goes like, oh, I have a world where there's lots of volcanoes, and you go, that's neat. And then when you really begin to think about it, you're like, wow, actually this changes everything. And it's really fun just mulling it over and listening to people bounce around ideas. I had great crack in the subreddit this month. It was good crack.
It was good.
It was good. And then finally for the emails, it's a bit of a non sequitur, but I thought it might be interesting to bring up. This is an email that's brought to us via Devon Beans. Great name as well. I really, really hope that's your real name. And we're
heavy on the beans this episode.
We are heavy on the beans. Maybe that's the title. Heavy on the beans.
like Waka Flocka is hard in the paint, but it's heavy in the beans.
Exactly. Devin Means wrote us, and basically you asked the idea about like meme culture on a fictional world. Would it exist? What would it look like? Etc. I'm fascinated by meme culture, mainly because I kind of don't really understand it. Yet I kind of partake in it. So I was interested in hearing what you have to say about it, Bill.
Would meme culture exist? Yes. Absolutely. Completely undoubtedly. Like what we think of it as is a fairly modern and fairly recent version of things that we just always do as humans and as a social species that communicates. Now ours is kind of quite interesting in that in the last 10 years, self-reference and kind of it's super postmodern and intertextual and stuff. And maybe that's quite specific, but like if you just think of it like the original meaning of the use of the word meme, it's just an idea that spreads virally, or it's more making the argument that ideas do spread virally just by their nature. They need someone to disseminate them in order to spread. And you can use kind of viral models to talk about ones that are more successful and how different ideas spread and stuff. But as regards like the specific meme culture, that grows from that grows from the idea that this is a funny joke or a funny concept or an idea with whatever kind of resonance for people, and that causes it to be successful, and then it interbreeds and is intertextual with other memes. If you look at medieval illustrations from Europe, there's like really funny stuff that appears across a lot of them, which is really similar to some of the stuff that we see in modern memes. Like the prevalence of rabbits and snails as artistic motifs in border illustrations.
Why?
I just think because it's funny, right? The thing with rabbits is rabbits are always, or very often, portrayed fighting people. Like actually like killing people with swords and stuff. Or like in armor jousting atop knights. And like that's just really funny. Like a rabbit being this kind of like horrible, dangerous monster. And I think partially it might grow out of them being pests that would break into monks' gardens and eat their crops or eat their herbs or whatever. And the same thing for snails. Snails, who are sort of portrayed as monstrous sometimes, are a pest in a garden. And it's partially a kind of a comedy thing, and partially them venting their frustrations about their day-to-day experience of these animals.
I have a somewhat gruesome snail-related anecdote from my life that I'd like to insert here, and then we can get back to talking about meme culture.
Let's hear
it. So my father was a enthusiastic amateur gardener, but he refused to use chemicals in the garden to deal with pests and stuff. Maybe this is a function of like the biome we live in or whatever, but snails are like particularly rampant back home. Like they're everywhere. Like there'd be times where you'd arrive home late at night or whatever, and there's like a horde of them. Like I'm talking maybe 30 snails just crawling up a wall. They don't come in isolated events. These snails, they came like in packs, and so his
came in waves
for dealing with the snails was to just like get a scissors and like to individually go in the garden every night and just chop them in half. And so
my God,
I know it's really gory. And in the mornings you just like come out to go to school or whatever, and like the garden is just littered with corpses. And like, because he's, halved
What
each,
the hell?
because he's halved each snail, and like he just let them fall where they fall or whatever. And because he's halved each snail, so that doubles the number of like kind of visible objects, visible snail-like objects. So you'd go into the garden and there'd be like 100 bits of snail just littered everywhere.
Or VSLOs, as we call them in the business.
Exactly. And then, like, I'm imagining birds or something would like try to pick at them, and some of them would like drop them mid-flight. So they'd be scattered on the patio as well. And he was totally fine with this. And like, he was a man that was very into his like, he's German, like he's very into things being done proper and things looking neat and everything being the way it should be. And then yet he was completely okay with like the snail apocalypse that happened every night. It was bizarre. It's very strange.
That's a peculiar approach to the problem, to my mind. Just get some hedgehogs. Just get some hedgehogs to live in the garden.
I mean, that would be a very organic way of doing it, and it's so labor
And also,
intensive.
then you have hedgehogs, which are super cute.
Man, hedgehogs are super cute, but like, I don't know if you've ever been startled by a hedgehog at night. They're terrifying. If you can see them in broad daylight and you can see their cute little faces and things like that, then it's fine. But when you're just like, I remember I used to go out the back of my house to smoke at night, and you would see nothing obviously because it was dark, and then you'd be there having a cigarette, and then this just like this ball just like scuttles towards you real quick, and like the like patio light or whatever will like catch on its little what are they called, spikes. And they kind of shine a little bit, like it's very creepy. And then once your brain registers as a hedgehog, everything's fine. But before your brain registers that, you're kind of like, this is how I end. This is it. This is how I die. It's no good.
I can't say I've ever had the experience of being frightened by a hedgehog, Edgar.
As we've established many years ago, I am terrified of everything. So it's completely fitting with my character. But yeah, the meme culture thing, right? I was going to ask you, and you literally just covered it. Like the idea of meme culture, I always thought that it cannot really be intrinsic to like modern life, because it is just the idea of like an idea that everyone can kind of get behind, and then it's propagated.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, I was going to ask you, like, do you know of memes in Rome, for example? Because you can imagine like the same thing. Like there must be some ideas that all Romans could identify with, and they'd be spread through like pamphlets or whatever, which is essentially just meme culture as well.
Yeah, graffiti.
Graffiti is a form of meme culture, yeah, for sure.
Well, like that was a big thing in Rome. Graffiti was, I think. So yeah, I think what's notable about the way we have it in our culture is just that we consume so much media. And we have so much kind of discourse and so much content and interaction with other people, like basically constantly, as long as we're awake for a lot of people. So the density of information that we exchange is very, very high. So ideas will mutate and spread faster over the course of like a given period of time than they would in older, less information dense societies.
Sure.
Now, I don't know if there's a way to compare how much an idea mutates according to the amount of information that is consumed, and maybe we are notable in that sense also. I don't know, but I think that's the particular thing that is notable about what we have, is that we just consume and exchange so much information that it's really fertile for memes to propagate and mutate.
Yeah, and under that sort of way of looking at things, I would say that meme culture, as we currently experience it, I would say that it's almost like a yes for all cultures as well, once they reach like a certain level of technological advancement that allows them to exchange ideas so quickly. So I would not be surprised if we landed on like, I don't know, Proxima Centauri. Is that a planet or that a star? Proxima Centauri A.
Pretty sure it's a star.
Yeah, Proxima Centauri A. We land on that planet, and
Man,
there's a whole
hot here.
and there's a whole bunch of people just like just sharing like these weird esoteric postmodern memes. I think that it almost feels like that's a natural evolution of what it is to spread ideas, So I'm a hard yes on meme culture would exist, and I'm a hard yes that meme culture would kind of exist as it is currently, given the correct technological level.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that would communicate as intently as we do, so any society or any species that's as social as we are, and is capable of the same kind of abstraction and has concepts of humor, then I think something extremely similar would, or certainly analogous would arise.
I wonder what the earliest meme culture would look like. Like, did people in the Stone Age have meme culture, and what did that look like? Because if we look at it as being the flip side of what it currently is, like rapid mutation, rapid spreading very quickly, those things would not occur. It would be like very slow spread and not prone to mutations there, perhaps. So like, I don't know, is there like a couple of hegemonic like memes that exist for Stone Age people? That'd be really interesting, because there's got to be, like, if they're a thinking group, like you said, it's capable of humor and things like that. I would imagine they have to evolve. It'd be really interesting to think about like how that culture would exist way back then.
Like, we have jokes from Mesopotamia.
Do we?
Yeah.
Wow. Can you recite said joke?
Not in the original language. I'm afraid my Akkadian pronunciation is a bit dodgy.
Why did the bushel of corn cross the road? That's how it starts.
Okay, now I'm not going to stake anything on this claim, but I have seen this a few times, so it's an idea that's out there. It may be faulty, but it's said that the oldest joke we know is from 1900 BC.
Whoa.
Yeah. And the joke goes, something which has never occurred since time immemorial. A young woman did not fart in her husband's lap.
I love that. It's just poop jokes. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. As far back as we can go in the history of humor, people thought farts were funny.
Man, that is great. That is great. It's a pity it's as verbose as it is, because that would have made a very good podcast title.
And I guess I'm sure you could make an argument that common elements found among early religions in similar regions, that's an example of like a mimetic spread of an idea.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we're both hard yes on this question, yeah?
I think so.
Devon Beans' meme culture done? Question mark?
I think so.
Cool. All right. What have you got anything to follow up from the Reddit from last show?
Someone did ask me a very good question that I don't really have a good answer for right now, and I will have to think about this. But on the sub, Omni314 said, a question for Bill. You've mentioned about the good guys in Harry Potter and Star Wars should be better at war, and they shouldn't rely on teenagers and hope. What does this better at war look like? Could you perhaps point to some works that show a good example of this? I mean, I'm sure I can. I'm drawing a blank right now. Not relying on teenagers and hope would be a good start, though, and having sensible strategies and logistics and things, and not just wing and prayer approach to stopping the bad guy. Yeah.
Can you think of an example of good at war in blockbusters, recent blockbusters?
Recent blockbusters.
or maybe not even recent, but just in film, like, is there an example of like the anti-Star Wars, an example where you're like, yeah, you know what, that was really good at war, but it's still set in the same sort of, like, it's obviously not a war movie, like it's in the same sort of vibe, but they just did war better.
The Hunger Games, maybe? Like the rebellion fight a reasonably good, sensible war.
Yeah, that's
and they don't rely on like silly things. Now they do. There are kind of some war crimes committed on both sides, which is part of the plot. Obviously, I'm not in favor of war crimes. And they nod towards this idea of, teenagers and hope in the Hunger Games by like making Katniss this figurehead, but that's that's an in-universe thing. It's not actually how they're fighting the war. It's like she's used as a propaganda symbol because this is an effective narrative. Having a figurehead like that is an effective narrative, but that's not actually how they do it.
Yeah, that's a good example, man. What do you think of Ender's Game, the way war is portrayed there?
I haven't seen it. I did read it.
Because that's a similar kind of thing. Like, your man is a young lad. He's a teenager, boy or whatever, and they're doing proper
Spoilers.
war. Spoilers, yes. Sorry, spoilers for Ender's Game. But they're doing proper war there. And at least when I read it at the very end, you're kind of like, I don't know, it feels very kind of real, government conspiracy, cover-up type thing.
There's a lot that's silly in that book, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, but it seems like the way it's presented in that book, it seems like a believable strategy that the military might undertake, given the way the book sets itself out. Like, I wasn't at the end of the book. At the end of the book, I wasn't feeling like, well, that was the dumbest thing ever. I was like, that makes total sense in this universe. That's really cool.
Yeah. It was a good reveal, and I didn't see it coming.
Yes, agree. Hard agree. Yeah, will you let us know if you come up with other examples of good at war, or formalize your ideas into a proper thesis?
I certainly will.
Certainly will. Anything else in the subreddit?
No, I think that's everything. People seemed to like my world building last month, so thank you for that, guys.
Every other month
I was happy with it.
Just last month was a rare gem in the rough.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Also entirely believable. No, joke. Will we? Okay, great. Will we crack in? Will we do some world building then? Given that everyone loves it, Bill.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Yeah, we're in Icairn again, and we're learning a little bit more this week about the relationship between the Tamar Company and the greater Abesk culture, and the Hoitan, and what scouting is and how scouting operates.
Cool.
Scouts are the fundamental element of our expansion into Hoitan at this time. They are to be given the greatest degree of autonomy that you consider prudent. By living on the land, moving among the locals, and learning intimately their languages and customs, Scouts are uniquely positioned to understand how a foreign country and a foreign nation can benefit most greatly from increased trade with the company, and how the company might best profit from such a trade. It is not practical to manage every degree of these interactions between Scout and Native. The greater liberty given to a Scout, the more successful their missions will be. Many captains fear that, by giving freedom overmuch to our Scouts, we risk losing them to the native land or native ways. This has been a tenet of the more conservative approach to scouting advocated for by many within this company, as well as the guiding philosophy of our fellow rivals in Elton and Valden. It is not that this restrained philosophy is without merit. A more directed scout, tied closely to their command or their home depots, will seldom stray, and properly managed can provide many years' worth of faithful and effective intelligence on the affairs of foreign lands. Consider, however, the relative gains of our company and those of our rivals in prospecting the Anches. In the many years since our company's adoption of a more liberal approach to scouting, Tamari holdings in that land have risen at a rate far greater than any other Abeski company. Thus, its efficacy in the field can be considered proven. But why is this the case? And why should we consider our success in Anches more than a fortunate coup? Our scouts are trained to an exceedingly high standard, and none are let loose upon a land that do not have a gift for self-sufficiency, survival, and the gathering of intelligence. They are each an impressive individual, and many owe a significant debt, whether fiscal or sentimental, to the company. This debt, and an understanding of the benefits of what we as a company can offer to foreign nations, makes them effective ambassadors for our mission, without them being constrained by the rigours of formal diplomacy. They themselves are often best suited to determine what course of action to take and which contacts to cultivate, and to do so immediately, waiting days for such orders to be communicated to a superior officer who is less intimately familiar with the environment, often results in the loss of fruitful opportunities. It is true that, following our doctrine, many more scouts leave their posts or attempt to settle among their host nations. This is the chief argument made by those favouring a stricter variety of scouting. However, even those scouts who abandon their careers may very often act to the furtherance of our goals. Scouts who turn native frequently submit to the greatest and most insightful intelligence before they abandon the company, due no doubt to their deep attraction to the host nation. Further, they have a destabilizing effect on the inhabitants and society they wish to integrate into. Their very presence either softens a nation attitude towards the Abeski, allowing us to integrate our business more easily, or it creates a discord and mistrust which will often lead to violence, allowing us a more overt approach to concentrating and enforcing our commercial interests. Sorend Techlecki, Commercial Coordinator, Hoitan 1st Depot.
Very cool. I'm a little bit conflicted about this work because there's loads of this where I think I really agree philosophy wise with what's going on here, but like obviously the Tamar Company is a terrible institution. So you've you've written something intriguing. So I like. Talk to me a little about the background before I get into questions.
So yeah, back in February, I wrote a diary entry from Levint to Alfren, who was writing about abandoning his career as a Tamar Company scout. And here we see a little bit about the command structure and the owners of the Tamar Company and their philosophy and doctrine towards scouting and how it operates and how they wish it to operate.
So I realize this is rarely ever the case, but it's worth asking again. The structure you've outlined here, the sort of corporate thinking, is it based on any real world analog, or again, are you just making this up?
Not directly, but I was kind of thinking about how in the history of the United States, for example, the Indian agents, as they were called, were nominally supposed to be, overtly, people would say that they were for the benefit of the natives, but they actually worked to further the United States interests, like the white supremacy and the eradication of the native culture in favor of the imported white European culture.
And it would work very much. So, would it have worked like this? Sort of like there was an advocacy from the higher ups to be all like, yes, integrate. Do or what's called act autonomously in your integration, because I think that's the kind of like the unique thing about this piece that you've written, this sort of like high level of autonomy you give kind of the foot soldiers, so to speak, Did we see that occur in America?
I don't know. I don't know enough about how that worked.
Okay, cool.
But I was kind of thinking of like the sort of Dances with Wolves trope of the good white man goes and is among the natives, and I was trying to kind of undercut that a little because even if you do that, you're still part of the aggressor colonizing culture, and if they were smart about it, a colonizing culture could exploit that and construct it in such a way that even if you are going to defect, that they have structure that benefit or that exploits even defection.
I mean, I've always maintained that the best way to bring about oppression is to do it through like empathetic means, like this good white man thing. So if you're like the company here, and like as you outline in your last paragraph, where you want to destabilize things, the best thing you can do is not wage overt warfare. The best thing you can do is try and like assimilate and destroy it from within. So yeah, I agree. If they were smart about things, 100%, they would go the more covert, overtly caring route. But then obviously that's a kind of like Trojan horse, sort of thing. Which again I find very interesting. We're kind of skipping about now, but I find that very interesting about your last paragraph, where the speaker says, "Well, look, sure, even if given the foot soldiers autonomy is a bad thing, actually it works out well in the end because they destabilize the culture and make us seem really nice and good and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, that's very dark. It's very good." The thing where I was like, I feel conflicted because I agree with the Tamar company here. The idea of autonomy, though, that rings very true to me, because like I'm constantly going on about how in corporate structures, the more autonomy you give people and the less micromanaged those people are, the more benefits you can get. So it's very weird to have the Tamar company kind of enact the sort of philosophy I call for in corporate structures. And then having to be like, but I don't actually like the Tamar company.
Yeah, they figured out an effective like management technique. They're just using it for evil.
Exactly. I admire the management technique. I do not admire the evil. Evil is no good.
Yeah. You approve of the means, not of the end.
Exactly. That's a very nice way of putting it. Come here, tell me about, because your first couple of points we've kind of covered here, the management thing. Tell me a little bit about Elton and Valden. New cities, any sort of flavor text regarding those?
No, they're just other companies.
Are the fellow rivals in Elton and Valden? It makes it sound like they're places, and the other companies exist in those places.
No, they're companies.
Okay, all right. So they're just like other Tamar. Size relative to Tamar company? Are they smaller? Are they equivalent? Who's Amazon and who's Google here?
They're older, and they have different geographical focuses. Like Tamar are very powerful in what's the first place I wrote about? Mearsphere. God, it brings back memories. Yes,
that's mad.
I think Mearsphere is the one I'm thinking of. But like they all have like places in most of the major cities. It's just that they have different like focuses and stuff. Yeah, so they're rival companies essentially.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. I like the way your scouts are kind of like. They give me images of a cross between Bear Grylls and some pencil-pushing diplomat, which I think is a very fun image. So I think kind of unique. Like I haven't really seen. You don't really read often that like ambassadors also need to have self-sufficiency and survival training. Like that's a cool little mix you got going there.
What's the pencil pusher part of it?
The ambassador part. Like, so I can imagine them in my head. I'm imagining these scouts, living on the land, rugged, Bear Grylls like, and then they show up somewhere, but they're also very erudite and have a good interpersonal skill set. and are good at communicating, very well spoken, that kind of thing. That's the pencil pusher. Like, I imagine the dude is almost like they get rid of their camo and they don a nice suit and tie and then approach the hoitad and then speak very eloquently. So I don't know if that's actually the case, but that's what I'm thinking in my head. Obviously not literally donning a suit, but like metaphorically donning the suit.
Yeah. But they have these two different roles they inhabit.
Exactly, yeah. And I think they're two kind of like contradictory sort of roles, and that's kind of fun. Is there a lot of scouts out there, or are these kind of like a very small, skilled group of people?
There would be a fair few, yeah.
Okay, so like a dime a dozen.
Not like a dime a dozen. Like it's not a like everyone who signs up goes and becomes a scout, but it wouldn't be like, it's not like a super elite thing either.
Okay. You mentioned there's a line here, they are each an impressive individual and many owe a significant debt, whether fiscal or sentimental, to the company. That is dark and that's great. And I love how the company leans on that to exploit them. But fiscal is pretty obvious. Sentimental, are we talking almost like sports ball here? As in like Edgar Scout really likes the Tamar company because that was the company that has the most influence in his hometown. He has like tribal loyalty to it.
I hadn't thought of that, but very possibly.
What were you thinking?
Just more that they take people out of poverty and give them education, and they provide them an exit from their unpleasant living circumstances. So you take a guy who lives in the slums around a tower in Lansk, and you give him a training, and you give him status, and you give him something to do in the world, and then he's loyal to you for doing that.
I mean, that's not that far removed from what I was thinking. You can say the same thing about lots of sports ball things, as in like, they have like youth outreach and provide facilities for, so it's not that far removed. I like the.
But in this case, it's more like giving them an actual job rather than just being like, I support Man United because I'm from Manchester.
Exactly, yeah.
Or whatever, yeah.
Again, I like the sort of like layers here. Like just like with the ambassadors, it's not just like rugged hillsman and pencil pusher. They're like both. I really like that there's like these different elements that are at play in terms of coercing, whether overtly or covertly, these ambassadors. I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
I suppose the only other thing that I have to say about it is that is there the people in the company who are more conservative and take a more conservative approach? Do they have a leg to stand on at all? Because this seems like a really solid rebuttal of the conservative approach. What would a conservative person say to counter this?
Well, I think if you look at the end of the fourth paragraph there, the Sutherland asks, why should we consider our successes in Anches more than a fortunate coup? He never actually comes back to that point.
Oh, so you think that the other faction would lean heavily that it's just good fortune?
Yeah, like he's got an agenda here in pushing this more liberal approach to scouting, with greater autonomy, and he is trying to be rhetorically effective here, which involves the use of some example and reference. But he is being more rhetorical than he is being necessarily strict. He doesn't actually explain in any way why Anches isn't just good luck, or that there might be other reasons why the Tamar Company was successful there other than scouting.
Well, so here's the thing. This liberal approach to scouting, has this been the status quo, or is this a recent development in their maneuvers in the area?
The Tamar Company have practiced it for a while, but other companies are more conservative.
And the Tamar Company would be considered one of the more proficient outfits?
Yeah, I can't remember if I said this already. It's a bit younger. It's more recently established, and it has grown faster than the others.
Right, but could a conservative person go, well, look at the Elton, for example. They take a very conservative approach and they are doing great. Maybe not as amazing as us, but we're class, you know. But so I suppose, sorry, to put that into a nice one-liner, is there a counter organization to Tamar that employ more conservative measures that could be considered successful?
Yeah, the other two companies, the Elton and the Valden, you could just say, I mean, like they're doing great work, and they have other successes in other fields, and they have been successful for a very long time with a different approach.
Okay, so the line, thus its efficiency in the field can be considered proven, that's erroneous. That's a point of view.
Yeah. That is overstating the case.
And so is this person Zorand? Are they pushing this agenda because they believe in this and they truly believe like this growth in the Tamar company has been because of this, or is there something else here? Like why would an upper management person want to proceed more liberally?
I mean, I guess Zorand thinks it is more effective.
Yeah, so
he genuinely thinks, this is more effective.
It is a genuine thing. There isn't some sort of like undercurrent thing going on here.
I wouldn't imagine so. No.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
And I like he may well be aware that he is not being like entirely honest in the argument he's making, but he wants to make the argument. He's not trying to be empirical or logical here. He wants to make this argument because he thinks he's right.
Sorry, slightly unrelated here. Are there groups, like abolishment groups, in Icairn? That's probably the wrong word to use. Icairn's the entire planet. The Abesk? The Anches? What do we call this region?
Abolishment of what?
Like, go back. Abolishment of these sort of like capitalist colonial things. Are there groups that are kind of in the region that like advocate against these companies and like try to undermine them?
Yeah, well, remember what happened in Lansk?
The riot, but like, did we note any specific groups, or was it just a mob? I can't remember. Was it just a kind of mob fed up with things, so things got heated?
There is a sort of a labour movement, yeah.
Okay, all right. It'd be interesting to hear.
Remember there was that agitator that got arrested, who is a notable kind of labour agitator from another city.
That's fair, yeah. Yeah, sorry, that makes sense. Yeah, man, cool. I enjoyed.
Thank you.
It's not cool that you maybe sympathise with a terrible institution, but you know.
That's on you.
Good writing is provocative. Have you got any closing things? Anything I've missed? The usual sort of thing.
No, I wanted to bring up that thing about the kind of sort of dishonesty within the argument, and the point that was brought up but then abandoned. So I think we've pretty much covered it all.
I consider myself to not be a very skilled interviewer, and to not be in general very good at asking questions. So it always fills me with great joy when I'm like, do you have anything else to cover? And you're kind of like, you got at the core thing I wanted to say. That makes me feel really good, because that's I think that the people who are really skilled at interviewing will just like inherently ask the important questions. And so yeah, it's always fun when you're like, no, that's it, Edgar, you covered it. I'm like, yes, go ahead. 10 points for Gryffindor.
And that makes me feel good that I have communicated it well as well. So pats on the back for both of us.
Listen, pal, though, if I fail to ask you questions, don't take that as you failing to communicate. Take that as me failing to ask questions. Like that needs to be the assumption going forward here, because otherwise, yeah, no good. But yes, very good as always. Thoroughly enjoyed. Very complex, and in a small amount of text as well. Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Edgar.
Okay, will we move on to some Edgar follow up, some Edgar building, Gilling?
Sure thing.
So I just released a video. Myself and Bibleridian collaborated together to work on Word Order Part 2, free word order in OA. Links are in the show notes. You can go check it out. and I thought I'd talk a little bit about it here. As always, have you watched it? Do you have anything that you want to pose to me before I give my opinions about things?
Yes, I have watched it.
And yes, you have questions.
I've one question and one cool point.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I didn't understand the difference between topic and focus.
Yeah. Welcome to a common misunderstanding. The way I think about it, this could be erroneous. I think of it kind of two ways. One is like literally almost like an emphasis sort of thing. Like the focus is like you saw us in the video where we were going through the focus parts. We would like emphasize. Like vocally just emphasize the focus. I kind of think of focus being like that, like almost as if it's written down, it's just italicized text to draw attention to a thing. That's one way of looking at it. And another way of looking at it, this is the bit where I could be erroneous because I'm speaking off the cuff, is topic stuff can very often be omitted through the use of pronouns and things like that, whereas I think focus stuff won't be. So like, you know, if you're having a conversation about a ship, very quickly into the conversation, you can begin replacing the word "the ship" with "it." Like, oh, it was great. Its hull was magnificent. That replacing of the topic, the ship, with "its" doesn't really occur in focus. The focus there would be kind of like the hull. You're drawing attention to the thing. So there's that I kind of in my head think distinguishes those two things. Again, could be erroneous, and it is a super difficult thing for English speakers to get their heads around because English just doesn't do topic focused stuff at all.
Yeah, and it's thus also hard to communicate in English.
It's very hard to communicate in English. Yes, the topicness not so much. Actually, I'm in the process of releasing the Q&A video, and I addressed some like people. Proposed various different syntaxes to make English topic prominent, and those are pretty easy to achieve. They're very stylized, but they're very easy to achieve. Focus stuff way harder to achieve to communicate using English. So yeah, it's a trippy one, man. It's a trippy one, and you're not the only one who didn't understand it.
Good.
Yeah. Did my explanation there make any sense with the omission thing?
Kind of, yeah. The emphasis one, less so, because they both just sound like emphasis to me. The way it was explained in the video, it just sounds like topic is when you emphasize it, and focus is when you emphasize it. And I didn't understand what the different emphases were.
But again, think about it like if you're having a conversation about a ship, like you'd emphasize that the conversation is about the ship. That would be the topic thing. And then going on in the conversation, you may wish to further emphasize like sub-emphasize almost different parts about the ship if you're talking about it, but still keep the general conversation about the ship. So there's kind of it's like a layered emphasis levels, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I think so.
I could be wrong. If anyone does speak a topic prominent language that has like focus positions and things like that, let us know. And particularly because I'm assuming if you're going to answer this call to action, you're also going to be okay with English. So it'd be really interesting to see how you think about your focus stuff through English. Like that would be very, very interesting to find out. So let me know in the subreddit. That'd be cool.
Do you know what's a topic prominent language?
No, yes, maybe. Oa?
Hungarian.
Hungarian, man. I don't know much about Hungarian. I hear it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I think it's got very free word order. And it does something like that the emphasis in the sentence is determined by the structure of the sentence. It's like the word immediately before the verb or something like that is the one that you want to draw attention to in the sentence.
Man, if Hungarian does do topic focus sort of thing, it might be a good excuse for me to reconnect with an old Hungarian friend from college and to discuss this, because I haven't talked to that guy in years, and he was a solid chap. That might be a good thing to do.
That guy's awesome.
That guy is awesome.
I saw him a little while ago on stage.
Did you? You saw him on stage? Does he? Has he gone back to the dreads, or is he still rocking the 9 to 5 haircut?
Long but not dreads, I think.
Long but not dreads. He was great crack. I remember I had dreads. I got dreads one summer before second year maybe? I think it's before second year of college.
I think so.
And I was kind of mad stoked to be like the one guy who has dreads in college, like the one kind of like out there quirky person, because I was real into that stuff back then, and it's gross and I don't like it now, but I was mad stoked. And I show up and I go out the back of college to have a cigarette, and there is that Hungarian man with a much better head of dreads than me, and I was like, well, crap. My moment of uniqueness lasted like from the front door to the back of the college, and that was it. And I was like, I'm done, I'm out. And there really genuinely was. I had to fight back this sort of like irrational like anger at the man. Like I didn't know him at all. He had just moved into college from where he came straight from Hungary, I think. So we had no connection at all. And I was just irrationally angry at him. And then like begrudgingly I would talk to him. And then after a while I was kind of like, oh, he's actually very, very nice. He's a lovely chap. And we became great friends. But yeah, I was such a dick back then. It was awful. Oh dear. But yeah, I must talk to him about Hungarian, because again, he would be a person, because he's fluent in English, who would be able to talk to me about it from a native perspective. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, so that was your question. What is your cool point?
The Hungarian thing, I just said it.
Oh, right. Oh, so we okay.
Just Hungarian has a cool topic structure.
Yeah, Hungarian in general is meant to be a very cool language. Like I always, the way I always think about it is that like all European languages are kind of meh, except for Finnish, Basque, and Hungarian. Like those are the ones that people are always like, ooh. But yeah, so yeah, so that was your question and your point. The thing that I want to bring up, and just, I don't know, just like have a muse about for a little bit, and it's only margin related to video, was people in comments were slagging my use of the bilabial trill, the blah sound, and people were like, oh, it's really ugly, it's a disgusting sound, and then other people were calling other people racist for calling the sound disgusting, and it was just this minor little flame war occurred. And this is a very...
God bless the internet.
God bless the internet is right. And it's a very weird thing to me to think of sounds as being ugly. And I wanted to know, like, do you think of things that way? Because it's akin to going, oh, the note D is an ugly note. It's like that's inherently meaningless. Like the note D in relation to other notes may be ugly or beautiful, and even that is very subjective. So like I think of like phonics as being the same thing. Like a sound is either ugly or not given its context, and not just inherently so. Do you think about sounds like that?
I think I'd agree with you. Yeah, the idea that something has aesthetic value without any context is very strange.
Yeah, it's really weird. And like by extension, like people are like, what's your favorite sound? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like not enough information cannot answer question. It's like, what's your favorite like combinations of sounds or things like that? It's a slightly better.
I can.
Sorry, go on.
I can perceive of having a favorite sound, but just like not in an aesthetic sense. It's just like it's cool. Or, you know, it's an unusual one, or, you know, you've got some kind of connection to it because of, you know, it's in a language you like or something. But just like, it's the most beautiful sound is, you know, that's weird to me.
It is weird. Like I still am like irrationally fond of the rolled or, because I couldn't do it for a while, and nor can I do it very well now. But so I always hear that, and it always sounds a little bit magical because I can't produce it. Like that's about the extent as far as I'm going to go with like assigning beauty to sounds. But like to be all like the bilabial trill is ugly, it's like, what? That makes no sense. Oh, it's bad. But yeah. it is. This is the thing though. I have seen throughout making these videos that it really is a case. Anytime I'm gonna sign racism here, which is not a thing I am quick to do. But there really is a trend where the minute you say something that sounds African-ish, or at least people's hyper-real ideas of what an African language might sound like. Initial M's, for example, that bilabial trill, various other constructs that sound African. Invariably, man, there's always someone in comments being like, it sounds primitive. And you're like, good God. Oh, reduplication. I know it's awful. Reduplication was the last time happened before this, where someone goes, because Biberidian had made that reduplication structure on verbs, and someone goes, it sounds very primitive. And then, proceeded to like cite languages that do it, but only cited languages that like that person would class as primitive. Like they didn't cite, for example, Basque, which I believe does reduplication like that, because that's a European language and that wouldn't be primitive. Do you know, like it's crazy that people that just literally just sounds inspire people to make judgment calls on people. Like it's the most bizarre thing to me. I don't understand it, and every time I see it, I'm just like left floored, like utterly baffled. It's mad.
I mean, if you're calling an existing human language primitive, you're almost certainly already being racist.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so strange. Like the word primitive can be used correctly in linguistics to imply like earlier states of a language. But to call any one language primitive is just so monumentally erroneous that like.
So can you say that again?
The word primitive can be used correctly when talk about linguistics to talk about like earlier states of a language. So you can say things like so like primitive forms of this word, for example, were X. Like you can say that.
Or like talking about proto-languages and precursors and stuff,
things like that. Yeah, like it's not a judgment call. It's literally like the primal version, the thing that came before. But to like use the word primitive when comparing existing languages, it's just so stupid. Like it's so stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Oh dear. Anyhow, but yeah, so that was the video.
Fun fact about the bilabial trill. You know Paraha?
I do.
So it exists in Paraha, and apparently they have a voiceless bilabial post-dental trill or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it occurs as a cluster with a T after a T sound, and it's a feature of their language in some context, and they avoid using it around non-Paraha because non-Paraha make fun of them because it's a silly sound.
Ah, Jesus.
Apparently.
That's just, that is...
And that's not just like, Westerners or Europeans or whatever. I think it's like other indigenous people in the region, apparently.
Like... silly sound. Like, I mean, I suppose, but like,
yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, but again, it's in context. Like, if you do a bilabial trill and you're sitting on the floor, playing with a little toy car, mimicking the sounds it could make, then yeah, I guess it's silly. But if you say "brolly," that's not silly. It's like context here. I don't know. I don't understand this whole world of assigning values to sounds. It's weird. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Me
either.
Wait, hang on, before you say it, I absolutely love when you do that. Like, I wish I had your confidence to just be okay with silence. Because, like, it cuts out and I'm sweating. I literally begin sweating, man, and be like, oh, shit, that point wasn't very interesting. There's a blockage in conversation. This is awful. Whatever will I do? I'll never be able to fix this in the edit. And you just, like, happily just sit there. I just wait for me to be like, Bill, are you there?
Sorry.
No, it's confidence, man. It's confidence. Anyway, you were about to say.
Yeah, I don't understand it either, really. I don't understand it at all.
Yeah, for sure. But anyhow, so the Q&A, the follow-up to this video is going up. I would encourage you to, going up today, I would encourage you to watch it, Bill. There's an interesting bit of bird conlanging that is in it that I think you should check out.
Awesome.
I think you'd be interested in it.
Cool, yeah, I'll check it out.
And with that, I think that's the end of Writer's Room. Bank of Artifexia is back in triumphant form, and this month we have a correspondence from a wonderful chap called Simon, who comes from Germany. And Simon has wrote a beautiful 4-page long handwritten message in what appears to be like ink fountain pen. I'm amazed at people's handwriting when they write in. There's some awesome handwriting going on. Simon did not send money, which is a flagrant disregard for the rules of the Bank of Artifexia, but I'll let it slide because now is a time for compassion and caring. No, I'm joking. You don't actually send money to write to the Bank of Artifexia. It's cool if you do, but you can just write if you want. I'll leave the address pal link in the show notes, and you can send it to that address. So anyhow, Simon writes. There's a lot that Simon says about like how they enjoy the show and what interests them sparked by it. I'm not going to read it out in there just for the sake of brevity, but Simon, I have read it, and I disagree with you that your sentences are too long because you speak German. Your sentences are A-okay, pal. Don't worry about it. So first thing they bring up is an idea for non-verbal languages, the perennial topic that Bill set up like a decade ago. And they asked about whether we know about the cuttlefish and a phenomenon known as cuttlefish hypnosis. I have not looked this up, but basically from what they say here, it's the idea of color changes to convey means of communication. And they brought up an interesting point here about how I think sometimes when people were doing non-verbal languages, they kind of thought about it as being a fully fledged language, just without words. But they bring up a really interesting point about the idea of like it necessarily being a limited language to an extent. So like certain color changes would mean like stay away, predator, and other color changes would mean like move fast, go now. And I think that's kind of a cool thing to explore. And as mentioned moments ago with the Q&A that's about to go up, the bird singing, the bird conlanging thing that I'm going to talk about follows this certain thing. There's this bird called the Carolina chickadee, and it communicates. Its calls have 5 distinct phonemes, like sound packets, and depending on which of those sound packets they highlight, they mean different things. Like predator, I'm in the air, there is food. So that's an actual IRL thing that occurs. So that's a really cool thing I think that could be elaborated on in a conlang, if that makes sense. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
No.
Does that cover? Does that cover the embodiment of, or no, embodiment's the wrong word, but like, so can they change color? Is it a uniform thing across their body, or can they pinpoint it?
Well,
Cuttlefish.
I think we should Google, or I think Bill should Google cuttlefish hypnosis and have a look.
Cuttlefish are cool as heck.
I don't know actually what a cuttlefish is. Does it look a bit like a squid?
I think it's more between like a squid and a crab.
Oh, jeez, they look terrifying, man. Oh, just the chills. Cuttlefish use hypnosis to hunt. Okay, let's have a listen to this.
They've got cool eyes that can see the polarization of light, I think.
Oh, very cool.
And they've got a bigger range of light perception than we do.
So what I'm seeing here is that they have broad color changes as opposed to singular pinpoint color changes.
Yeah.
But again, a fiction species can do whatever the hell you want it to do, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
So that was one point, which tied in with the Q&A, which I thought was a very, very good bit of timing. The other point is directed primarily at you, Bill. And this is asking, since especially Bill seems to enjoy stories told via the diegetic medium, I was wondering if you know about the SCP universe by any chance. Secure, contain, and protect. Have you ever heard of this, Bill?
I have heard of it. I'm not super familiar with it, but I've heard of it.
Okay, well, I have not heard about this at all. So what Simon says here is that it's essentially a crowdsourced Wikipedia-style work of like mass fan fiction, where not fan fiction, but like amateur writing, where the idea is that the Wikipedia is a collection of short stories and supernatural phenomenon, and it's told in a very diegetic way, which I think is pretty baller. I think it's a really cool thing. My only reservations with any of these things are always standard. I find sometimes with like crowdsourced stuff, the standard of writing tends to vary massively, and also the idea of everything remaining on message, on brand, can also vary a lot, which lots of people see as a positive. I can kind of see as a negative. Like I kind of much prefer like George Lucas style prequels where it's like, even if the story's bad, it's like one man's telling of a bad story. It's like this, you're getting it from one mind, whereas sometimes getting it from multiple minds, it can be a bit messy. What do you think, Bill?
Just on that last point, I like there to be a sort of a guiding thing that kind of keeps it consistent. Yeah. But yeah, so my understanding of SCP is it's essentially a wiki, and all of the entries are descriptions of artifacts that are held by this SCP group, and that's how it's diegetic. It's a report on what the artifact is, and people come up with their own, and write about them, and they're saved on the wiki, and there's some cool stuff in it. I haven't followed any kind of overall themes or any overall story within it. But as little individual bits of writing, some of them are very, very good.
And is this SCP? Is this meant to be a fictional thing on Earth, or is it in its own universe?
I'm pretty sure it's on Earth. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so it's like a governmental body almost.
Yeah. Did you ever see Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yes, like vaguely in the background when I was younger. I've never watched any of those films with intent.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you remember then, at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Ark of the Covenant has been recovered, and the last thing you see is it just like being stored in a warehouse somewhere. Mm-hmm. And essentially the SCP Foundation runs that kind of warehouse where artifacts are kept hidden and protected from the rest of the world, or protecting the world from them.
Wait, hang on. So is the SCP mentioned in Indiana Jones, and this is an extension of it?
No. Oh, that's just an illustratory example. That is the kind of thing that the SCP is meant to be.
So speaking of supernatural phenomenon, did you hear about the government, or the US government rather, releasing all the UFO stuff?
I saw they put out a couple of videos, yeah, but I didn't watch them.
Apparently, right, one of the main triggers for this is your man from Blink 182, which is...
Yeah, he's mad into UFO stuff, isn't he?
I listened to him on Joe Rogan, and like I don't think he's a real person. He's so strange. Like, it seems like he is he is UFO conspiracy theories. That's all he eats, sleeps, breathes, and it's just, and he seems to make like massively like outlandish claims about. There was one thing he said, he founded a company, and the company are in the process of releasing like anti-grav technology that they've got from bits of UFO debris or some crap like that. And it's like, what? You're making these claims that cannot be substantiated. Like, what is this? Like, it's mental. And then I read that
it's bizarre.
It's crazy. And then I read that he's actually like done something, like not just like telling fanciful stories. He actually got the government to release stuff, and it's like, what's going on? Like, the world has been turned upside down, Bill. It's so strange.
It's super weird. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. I haven't watched it. I'm not that interested in it. Like, I don't consider it. My expectation that it will be interesting is so low that I haven't watched it.
Yeah, I've seen some of the things. It's like it's fine. Like, I'm not like, oh my god, the aliens are taking over. Like, that's not the conclusion I draw from these things. Yeah. Anyways, conspiracies to do with UFOs are like the most boring conspiracies I find. There's better conspiracies to be concerned your time about. The alien ones are just, they're so easily explained by tech. You know, like, oh, I saw a thing. Or even when, like, you know, fighter pilots say that they're on training maneuvers and they see some unidentified thing. Like, Occam's razor here. It could just be advanced tech that you haven't been made aware of yet, as opposed to, like, aliens have come from outer space. You know, it's just so, it's so easily described away that it's a boring conspiracy to me.
But also, like, I mean, that is literally just what a UFO is. It's anything unidentified. Like, it doesn't mean alien.
Right, and everyone just always makes the leap to alien, and it's almost that almost seems more boring. Like, so if you're a fighter pilot and you see some unidentified flying object, like, it's more interesting to create conspiracy theories about, like, the Russian government, right? And to, like, play it into real world politics, but to just go, like, it's an alien, kind of like, that's end of discussion. It's like, well, okay, great, like, nothing else to talk about here, nothing interesting to talk about. From a fiction narrative point of view, it's weak pulling the alien card, I think.
Yeah, it lends itself to laziness. It can be good, but it's not good in and of itself, and it can be done. You can do bad stuff with it very easily.
My favorite conspiracy theory is the flat Earth thing. I don't know. Do you like conspiracy theories, Bill? Like, not in the sense that believe them. Do you find yourself drawn to, like, the fictional aspect of them at all?
Not as much as I used to. But I don't know. The culture around conspiracy theories has gotten increasingly fashy since I became an adult. I remember, like, 10 years ago, I felt that they leaned left more than they do now. Maybe that was just my ignorance, and I wasn't noticing things. But they're super fashy nowadays, and that just makes me kind of sad and not want to engage with it too much.
I can't say that's the experience. So I consume a lot of conspiracy content because it's kind of my guilty pleasure. I shouldn't like it, but I really like the storytelling aspect of it, because it's basically like human fan fiction, IRL fan fiction, which is great. I love it.
Fanfic of reality.
Exactly, it's a fan fiction of reality, and by their very nature, conspiracy theories are like they need to be interesting in a way if they're to gain any sort of traction. So the things I consume a lot of, like, I consume an awful lot of flat Earth content because I find that to be just, I think there's something very compellingly interesting about this thing that has arisen recently. I don't get a sense of fashiness in that sphere. I get a sense of, religiosity, and a sense of, like, definitely a sense of conservatism, but I don't get a sense of fascism there at all. So is this a thing that maybe is sequestered, that, like, different areas draw radically different people?
Yeah, maybe it's not a thing particularly in flat earthism, but, like, just so often it comes down to, like, shadowy cabals and globalist agendas, and very, very often that's just dog whistle for Jews.
Yeah.
And
no, that's fair.
Like, yeah.
I guess
I don't want to engage with that much.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess the shadowy cabal thing that occurs with flat earthism is NASA. I guess that's where they usually tend to just treat NASA as being the shadowy cabal, which I don't really see that as a dog whistle. I see that more as kind of like an anti-government stance, like the government is taking over and clouding our judgment, Yeah.
I know. I'll just trust conspiracy theorists to manage to shoehorn anti-Semitism into nearly everything.
Yeah, there definitely are like there definitely are like real hateful conspiracy theorists, 100%. And then there's like the fun, wacky ones. And I tend to like the fun, wacky. Like, again, the flat Earth one, I think, is a real fun, wacky one. Like, it has no consequence at all. Like, like the common rebuttal is like, why would anyone lie about the shape of the Earth? And that's kind of like underpins the wackiness of it. And I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And I feel really bad though, because, like, I watch it on YouTube like a lot, and I'm always kind of like, I am giving my attention to this. Like, I'm telling the algorithm that this is a thing that I like, and I feel kind of bad about that in a weird way, or like I'm I'm potentially making someone's career, being making them a professional flat earther with my attention. So there's this weird tug in me where I'm like, I find these stories really compelling, but I also don't want to support them. And it's just, it's the definition of a guilty pleasure, 100%.
I like kind of old school ones, as I was saying, like the Illuminatus trilogy and stuff. That's kind of fun. To go back to like the 70s, and conspiratorial things in media I can enjoy, and there's an aesthetic appeal to conspiracy theories. Certainly, just I haven't been into them that much in the recent years.
I mean, your methodology here is clearly the correct methodology, because you don't want to be me who just consumes too much of this crap, knowing that it's crap. It's so bad. But yeah. So anyway, Simon. I was completely unaware of the SCP, Secure, Contain, Protect. I'll go check it out. Links will be in the show notes for other people to go check it out. It sounds fun. And thank you for writing in as well. It's as always, it's amazing to get letters from all over the world sent in. Like, it's a really unique position to be in, and we are really grateful that people will take the time to do so. It's really cool.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. Schönen Dank.
Schönen Dank. So will we wrap it up there? I don't have really much else
I
to
think
add.
we can wrap it up there.
Cool.
That's it for me.
As always, thank you so much for listening, everyone. Thank you for supporting the show on Patreon. Links in the show notes if you want to go do that. And also pick up some merch. I am going to make Goose-related merch at some stage, so watch this space. Thanks for listening, and until next time, Edgar out.
Edgar out.